The Vraxian ship cut through space like a knife. Its dark metal hull absorbed light rather than reflected it. The vessel was 3 miles long and shaped like a predatory animal. Sharp points extended from its front, looking like teeth ready to. Bitey Captain Jack Miller stared at the view screen on the bridge of the Earth Defense Force ship Defiance. His hands gripped the arms of his command chair so tightly that his knuckles turned white. The Defiance was a small exploration and defense vessel, not meant for major battles. Its crew of 35 had never expected to encounter anything, like the monster ship that now approached them. "Any response to our communication attempts?" Jack asked, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Lieutenant Susan Walsh shook her head. Her red hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her face showed the same concern Jack felt. "Nothing, Captain. They're ignoring all standard greeting protocols." Jack nodded, not surprised. The debris field floating around them told the whole story. Outpost Delta, once home to 57 scientists and support staff, was now just twisted, metal and frozen bodies. The Defiance had arrived too late. "Chief Pearson, status report," Jack called to his engineer. Frank Pearson's gruff voice came over the comm system. He was in the engine room trying to squeeze every bit of power from their systems. "Engines at 98%, Captain. Shields are holding, but they weren't designed to face something that size." Jack turned to his right where Dr. Alan White sat trembling. They had found the scientist floating in an escape pod, the only survivor from the outpost. His face was pale and his eyes looked unfocused. "Dr. White, I need you to focus," Jack said gently but firmly. "What can you tell us about them?" Alan blinked several times, then seemed to come back to the present. "They called themselves the Vraxians. When they first appeared, we thought they might be peaceful. We were wrong." He swallowed hard. "They said humans were just meat for the harvest. Then they started killing everyone." "Did they say anything else? Give any reason?" Jack pressed. "They said they've conquered 17 other species, that they're the apex predators of the galaxy, and that—" Alan's voice broke. "That we would be honored to be their next conquest." The ship suddenly shook violently. Susan's hands flew across her control panel. "They're scanning us with some kind of energy." "Beam," she reported. "Our shields are dropping fast." Jack made a quick decision. "Evasive pattern Delta. Prepare for emergency jump." The helmsman, a young man named Greg Porter, nodded. "Aye, Captain. Plotting course now." "They're launching smaller vessels," Susan warned. "At least a dozen fighter-class ships heading our way." Jack leaned forward. "Dr. White, is there anything you observed that might be a weakness? Anything at all that could help us?" Alan closed his eyes, thinking hard. "They have exoskeletons. Like insects, but stronger. Most of our weapons didn't even scratch them, but—" His eyes opened. "One of our security officers hit one with an electrical weapon. It seemed to cause the alien pain, made its movements jerky for a few seconds." Jack nodded. "Susan, adjust our defensive systems to include electrical pulse bursts." "Captain, we can't fight that ship," Greg said, his young face showing fear but determination. "Even with modified weapons." "We're not going to fight," Jack replied. "We're going to run. But we might need to slow those fighters down first." He hit a button on his chair. "All hands prepare for emergency maneuvers and possible fighter engagement." The Defiance turned sharply, its engines glowing bright blue as it accelerated away from the massive Vraxian ship. But the alien fighters were fast, closing the distance quickly. 5 minutes until we can jump to faster than light speed," Greg reported. Susan's fingers danced across her weapons console. "Fighters in range in 30 seconds. Jack stood up. "Target the lead fighters with electrical pulse bursts. Let's see if Dr. White's observation holds true." The Defiance shuddered as the first Vraxian fighters opened fire. Their weapons were, unlike anything Jack had seen before, green energy that seemed to eat through the ship's shields. "Shields at 60% and falling," Frank reported from engineering. His voice strained. "Return fire," Jack ordered. The human ship's modified weapons fired back, blue-white pulses of electrical energy shooting toward the alien fighters. The first few missed, but then one connected with the lead fighter. The effect was immediate. The Vraxian ship spun out of control, its systems clearly disrupted. "It worked," Susan exclaimed. The electrical pulse overloaded something in their systems. Jack allowed himself a small smile. Target the others, same approach. For the next 4 minutes, the Defiance played a deadly game of cat and mouse with the Vraxian fighters. The human ship took damage, significant damage, but the modified electrical weapons proved effective enough to keep the fighters from delivering a killing blow. Jump capability in 10 seconds, Greg announced, his forehead beaded with sweat. The bridge shook violently as a Vraxian weapon struck them directly. Hull breach on deck 3, Frank shouted. Emergency containment fields holding, but barely. 5 seconds. Greg continued the countdown. Jack watched the view screen as the massive Vraxian mothership grew larger, now moving to intercept them directly. 2, 1. Jumping now. The stars on the view screen stretched into lines as the Defiance leapt into faster-than-light travel, leaving the Vraxians behind. A collective sigh of relief filled the bridge. Damage report, Jack ordered, falling back into his chair. Susan looked up from her console, her face grim. Bad, but we'll survive. 12 injured, no deaths. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5, but containment fields are stable. Jack nodded, then turned to Dr. White. We need to know everything you can tell us about these Vraxians. Humanity needs to prepare. Alan's hands were still shaking, but his voice was stronger now. They've never failed to conquer a species, Captain. Never. They believe it's their right as evolutionary superiors. Well, Jack said, looking around at his crew. They've never met humans before. 3 days later, the damaged Defiance limped into Earth orbit. Jack stood before the hastily assembled Earth Defense Council, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from the battle. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his voice grave but determined. We are at war with an enemy unlike any we have faced before. The Vraxians have conquered 17 other species, and now they've set their sights on us. He paused, looking at each council member in turn. But they've made a critical mistake. They think we're like the others, that we'll either surrender or try to fight them on their terms. We won't do either. We're humans. We adapt. We overcome. And we never, ever give up. As Jack finished speaking, reports began coming in from other outposts. The Vraxians weren't just attacking at one point, they were launching a full-scale invasion across the frontier of human space. The war had begun. 6 months passed since the Defiance escaped the Vraxian attack. Earth and its colonies were now on high alert. The aliens had begun attacking human outposts along the frontier, following their usual pattern of terror and destruction. Commander, Olivia Bennett worked in a large room filled with screens and holographic displays. The room was part of the new Xenobiology Threat Assessment Center, built deep underground in what used to be a mountain in Colorado. Olivia had been studying the limited data available on Vraxian biology and behavior for months now, barely sleeping. She looked up as General Nathan Carter walked into the room. He was a tall man with gray hair and a face that showed the strain of recent months. As the leader of Earth's military response to the Vraxian threat, he carried a heavy burden. Please tell me you have good news, Commander, he said, his voice tired. Olivia pointed to her main display, which showed a comparison between Vraxian and human evolutionary paths. I might have something, sir. The Vraxians have conquered 17 species, but they've never failed, not once. That's not exactly comforting, General Carter replied. But here's the thing, Olivia continued, her eyes bright with excitement. They've never met humans before. Every species they've faced has either surrendered right away or tried to fight the Vraxians directly, using the same tactics the Vraxians use. And you're suggesting we do something different? Exactly. Olivia pulled up new images on her screen. The Vraxians evolved as apex predators on their homeworld. Everything about them is designed for direct combat and dominance. But humans... She displayed a chart showing human evolution. We evolved as persistence hunters. We're not the strongest or fastest, but we're adaptable, creative, and we never give up. General Carter studied the display, his expression thoughtful. So you're saying we shouldn't try to match their strength? Right. We need to fight in ways they don't expect. Ways they've never seen before. Across the room, weapons designer Ryan, Cooper looked up from his workstation. He was young for his position, only 32, but he had already created several breakthrough defense systems. His desk was covered with pieces of Vraxian technology salvaged from battle sites. "General Commander, I think I've found something," he called out. "Come look at this." Olivia and General Carter walked over to Ryan's station. On his screen was a detailed analysis of the Vraxian exoskeleton. "We've been trying to find ways to penetrate their armor," Ryan explained. "But I think we've been looking at it wrong. Their exoskeletons aren't just protection. They're also how the Vraxians sense their environment and communicate with each other." He pointed to a section of the alien armor where several small openings were visible under high magnification. These pores release chemical signals, like pheromones. I think they use them for battlefield coordination. Olivia leaned closer. "So if we could disrupt those signals somehow." "We could confuse them, break down their command structure," Ryan finished. "It's not much, but it's a start." General Carter nodded slowly. "Good work, both of you. Keep at it." He turned to leave, then stopped. "The Vraxians think they're facing just another species of prey. Let's show them what happens when the prey fights back." Meanwhile, deep in space, scout pilot Kate Martinez floated in her small stealth ship. The vessel was barely larger than a fighter, but equipped with the most advanced cloaking technology Earth had. Kate had been in the same position for 3 days, watching and recording as a Vraxian battle fleet assembled. Her small cabin was dark, except for the glow of her instruments. She kept all non-essential systems powered down to avoid detection. The only sound was her own breathing and the occasional soft beep from her sensors. Kate zoomed in her cameras on the central ship of the Vraxian fleet. It was massive, at least 5 times larger than the ship that had attacked the Defiance. Around it, dozens of smaller but still imposing warships moved in formation. "This is Scout 7 to command," she whispered into her comm system, though there was no need to be quiet in the vacuum of space. Old habits from stealth training died hard. "I'm counting at least 30 major warships and over 100 fighter-class vessels. They're gathering at the coordinates I'm sending now." Back on Earth, Captain Jack Miller listened to Kate's report in the war room of the Earth Defense Force headquarters. After surviving the first Vraxian encounter, he had been promoted and now helped coordinate defense strategies. His experience with the aliens made him valuable, though he sometimes wished he was back in space, commanding his own ship. Based on their formation and direction, Kate continued, her voice coming through slightly distorted due to the distance, "I believe they're preparing for a major assault. Their target appears to be the Procyon colony cluster." Jack turned to his tactical display. Procyon was home to 3 human colonies with a total population of nearly 2 million people. It was also a major manufacturing center for Earth's fleet. "How long until they move?" he asked. "Hard to say," Kate replied, "but they're almost done gathering. I'd guess no more than 48 hours. Jack nodded grimly. "Keep watching them. Scout 7. Report any changes immediately." "Will do, Command. Scout 7 out." Jack looked up at General Carter, who had just entered the war room after leaving the Xenobiology Center. "Sir, we have confirmation. The Vraxians are targeting Procyon." "I expected as much," the general said. "They're going after our ability to build ships." "The Procyon defense fleet isn't strong enough to stop this attack," Jack pointed out, gesturing to the tactical display showing the size of the Vraxian force. "No, they're not," General Carter agreed. "Not in a direct battle, anyway." He touched his comm unit. "Get me Commander Bennett and Mr. Cooper. I think it's time to try their approach." 2 days later, Lieutenant Paul Johnson floated in zero gravity, inside his specially designed ghost suit. The suit masked all his life signs and was nearly invisible against the backdrop of space. Around him, 500 similarly equipped soldiers waited silently among the asteroids of the Procyon system. Each soldier carried a new weapon designed by Ryan Cooper, an EM pulse rifle specifically tuned to the frequency that seemed to disrupt Vraxian neural systems. The weapons were untested in actual combat, but the simulations had been promising. "Remember," came the whispered voice of Major Diane Lewis over their secure channel. "Aim for the joint sections where their exoskeleton is thinnest. Wait for my signal." Paul checked his weapon one more time, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. The Vraxian fleet would arrive any minute. This would be humanity's first real stand against the alien invasion. In the distance, space seemed to ripple as the first Vraxian ships appeared. The massive vessels moved confidently, clearly not expecting any significant resistance. "Steady," Major Lewis's voice came again. "Let them get closer." Paul held his breath as the alien fleet moved deeper into the asteroid field. The Vraxians had no idea that what looked like a simple navigational obstacle was actually a carefully prepared trap. "Now," Major Lewis commanded. 500 EM pulse weapons fired in unison. Brilliant blue energy streaked through space, striking the Vraxian ships from all directions. The specialized frequency caused the aliens' exoskeletons to lock up temporarily, paralyzing many of the Vraxian crews. For the first time in their long history of conquest, the Vraxians experienced something new: retreat. Supreme Hunter Kazavak stood on the command deck of his battleship, the Eternal Claw. His tall, insect-like body was covered in a dark blue exoskeleton that showed many battle scars. Each scar was a mark of pride for a Vraxian warrior. The more scars, the more respect one commanded. But right now, Kazavak felt no pride. He felt confused. The humans were not behaving like prey should. Instead of gathering their forces around their important worlds, they were scattered across many star systems. Instead of meeting the Vraxian fleet in open battle, they used hit-and-run tactics. They would strike quickly, then disappear before the Vraxians could respond. "Status report," Kazavak demanded, his voice a low growl. A lower-ranked Vraxian approached, keeping his head lowered in respect. "Supreme Hunter, our forces are spread thin across 7 systems. The humans continue to use their stealth technology to attack our supply ships. They avoid direct confrontation with our main battle groups," Kazavak hissed in frustration. In his long career conquering other species, he had never seen such tactics. The humans were not fighting the way prey was supposed to fight. "They are cowards," he declared. "They fear to face us directly." "With respect, Supreme Hunter," the officer said carefully, "I do not believe it is fear that drives them. They appear to be deliberately choosing when and where to fight." Kazavak turned, his large compound eyes toward the officer. In another time, he might have killed a subordinate for such a statement. But after the defeat at Procyon, he had learned to listen more carefully. "Explain," he ordered. "The humans study us. They learn our patterns. Then they use that knowledge against us. They do not try to match our strength. Instead, they target our weaknesses." Kazavak clicked his mandibles together as he thought. "Then we must change our approach. If they will not meet us in open battle, we will force them to do so." He turned to the large tactical display showing the nearby star systems. "Here," he said, pointing to a medium-sized planet. "This is one of their larger colonies. We will concentrate our forces and attack it directly. They will have no choice but to defend it with everything they have." The subordinate officer hesitated. "Supreme Hunter, may I point out that this could be what they want? To draw our fleet into a specific location?" Kazavak's patience ended. "Enough. The humans are clever for prey, but they are still just prey. We are the apex predators of this galaxy. We have conquered 17 species before them. They will be the 18th. Deep in the asteroid field where the Vraxian fleet had suffered its first defeat, Admiral Howard Grant of the Earth Defense Force studied intelligence reports on his tablet. He was an older man with dark skin and gray hair, his face showing the experience of many years in space. "They're moving their forces," he said to the officers gathered around him in the hidden command center. "Intelligence suggests they're planning a major attack on New Eden." Captain Jack Miller, who was now serving as the Admiral's tactical advisor, frowned. "New Eden has nearly 5 million citizens. If the Vraxians attack in force, we don't have enough ships to evacuate everyone." "Then we need to make sure the attack doesn't succeed," Admiral Grant said firmly. "What's the status of those new weapons Cooper has been developing?" Major Diane Lewis spoke up. Her ghost suit operation had been so successful that she had been promoted and given command of a special forces unit. The portable EM disruptors have been deployed to all frontline units, and the larger version for our ships has been installed on about 60% of the fleet. What about the new stealth fighters? The Admiral asked. Ready for deployment, Jack replied. We have 300 of them stationed near New Eden already. Admiral Grant nodded, then looked at Commander Olivia Bennett, who had joined the meeting via holographic projection from her lab on Earth. Commander, do you have anything new for us? Olivia's hologram flickered slightly. Yes, sir. We've managed to decode more of the Vraxian communication signals. We believe we can now predict their basic tactical movements by analyzing their pheromone patterns. Good work, the Admiral said. We'll need every advantage. He stood up straight, looking at each person in turn. The Vraxians think they're forcing us into a decisive battle. Let's show them what happens when humans have time to prepare. 3 days later, the Vraxian fleet appeared near New Eden. 40. Large warships and hundreds of smaller vessels moved toward the planet in a tight formation. On the surface, 5 million people watched the skies in fear. Supreme Hunter Kezvak observed the human defenses with satisfaction. Just as he had predicted, they had gathered a large fleet to protect the colony. He could see nearly 100 human ships forming a defensive line around the planet. They have fallen into our trap, he told his officers. They cannot match our firepower. Today we will break their resistance once and for all. He gave the order to attack, and the Vraxian fleet surged forward, weapons charging. But as they closed in on the human defenders, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't move to engage. Instead, they held their position, forming a tight, defensive screen. And then, from behind the planet's 3 moons, hundreds of small vessels suddenly appeared. The new human stealth fighters were fast and hard to target. They darted between the larger Vraxian ships, firing their EM disruptors with precision. The weapons didn't cause much physical damage, but they played havoc with the Vraxians' neural systems and ship controls. At the same time, the larger human vessels activated their own EM disruptor weapons, creating a web of energy that enveloped the front ranks of the Vraxian fleet. On board the Eternal Claw, systems began to fail. Vraxian warriors stumbled, their exoskeletons locking up randomly. Communication between ships broke down as the pheromone transmitters malfunctioned. What is happening? Kozvak demanded, fighting to remain standing as his own exoskeleton twitched painfully. The humans, his second-in-command managed to say. They've found a way to target our neural pathways and communication systems. For the first time in his life, Supreme Hunter Kozvak felt fear. Not fear of death. All Vraxians accepted death in battle as honorable. No, what he feared was failure. In all their history of conquest, no Vraxian commander had ever lost a war. Fall back, he ordered. Regroup at the rally point. As the Vraxian fleet retreated from New Eden, Admiral Grant watched from his flagship. He didn't celebrate yet. This was just one battle, and the war was far from over. They'll be back, Jack Miller said, standing beside him, and they'll have adapted to our tactics. Of course they will, the Admiral replied. But so will we. That's the difference between them and us. They evolved to be perfect predators, but that perfection made them rigid. We evolved to adapt to changing conditions. And in this war, adaptation is the key to survival. News of the victory at New Eden spread quickly through human space. For the first time since the war began, people dared to hope. The Vraxians could be beaten. The apex, predators of the galaxy, had met their match. Supreme Overlord Dirac, ruler of the Vraxian Dominion, stood in his private chamber on the Vraxian homeworld. His exoskeleton was a deep purple, almost black, marking him as the highest-ranking member of his species. The chamber walls displayed images of conquered worlds and defeated species, 17 in total, each one a testament to Vraxian superiority. But now, for the first time in the long history of the Dominion, those victories felt hollow. The humans were not falling into line. They were not being conquered. They were fighting back, and worse, they were winning. Dirac turned as Supreme Hunter Kozvak entered the chamber. The military commander moved slowly, still recovering from injuries sustained during the defeat at New Eden. You have failed me, Kazavak, Durak said, his voice like grinding stones. 3 major defeats, countless minor setbacks. This has never happened before. Kazavak lowered his head in submission. The humans are unlike any species we have faced, Supreme Overlord. They adapt too quickly. After each encounter, their tactics and weapons evolve, becoming more effective against our strengths. These creatures learn too quickly, Durak growled. We must change our approach. He moved to a large tactical display showing a map of human-controlled space. No more gradual conquest. We will gather all our forces for a single massive strike against their homeworld. We will crush them before they can adapt further. Kazavak hesitated. Such a direct approach is not without risk, Supreme Overlord. It will leave our other territories vulnerable. I am not concerned with risk, Durak snapped. I am concerned with results. The longer this war continues, the more our reputation suffers. Already there are whispers among our subject species. If the humans can resist us, perhaps others can as well. He moved closer to Kazavak, towering over the military commander. Gather every ship, every warrior. We will attack Earth directly. We will end this quickly, and the galaxy will remember why the Vraxians are feared. On Earth, Dr. Lisa Palmer stood before the United Earth Defense Council. The council chamber was a large circular room deep underground, designed to survive even the most devastating attack. Around the central table sat 12 people representing different regions of Earth and its colonies. Lisa was nervous but determined. As the head of xenobiology research, she had been working on something that could change the course of the war. Council members, she began, we've made a breakthrough in understanding Vraxian biology. As you know, they communicate partially through pheromones, chemical signals released from their exoskeletons. These signals are particularly important during combat, allowing them to coordinate their actions without electronic communication that we might intercept. She displayed a holographic model of a Vraxian warrior. We've synthesized compounds that can disrupt their pheromone signals. In theory, this could cause confusion in their ranks, breaking down their command structure. From within, Admiral Grant, who was present via holographic projection from his flagship, leaned forward. In theory, you haven't tested this? We can't test it properly without live Vraxians, Lisa admitted, but our simulations show a high probability of success. How would we deploy these compounds? Asked one of the council members. That's the difficult part, Lisa replied. To be effective, the disruptors need to be released near their command ships. We'd need to get very close. The chamber was silent for a moment. Getting close to Vraxian command ships seemed nearly impossible. Then Colonel Sam Brooks spoke up. He was a tall man with a scar across his left cheek, commander of the newly formed Special Tactics Division. His unit specialized in high-risk operations behind enemy lines. My team can deliver the package, he said confidently, but we'll need a distraction. Admiral Grant nodded slowly. Our intelligence suggests the Vraxians are gathering their forces for a major assault. They're likely targeting Earth itself. If that's the case, we'll have plenty of distractions. This is a dangerous gamble, another council member pointed out. If it fails, Earth will be vulnerable. We're already vulnerable, Admiral Grant replied. But the Vraxians have shown a pattern. When their standard tactics fail, they resort to overwhelming force. They're becoming predictable. That's something we can use against them. The council voted to approve the plan. They had 2 weeks to prepare before the Vraxian fleet was expected to arrive. During those 2 weeks, Earth became a hive of activity. Civilian populations were moved to underground shelters. Every available ship was brought to defend the planet, and Colonel Brooks and his team trained relentlessly for their crucial mission. The plan was audacious. While Earth's main fleet engaged, the Vraxians in conventional battle, Brooks and his team would infiltrate the Vraxian command ship using captured Vraxian technology and experimental stealth systems developed by Dr. George Hill, a brilliant engineer who had been working on reverse engineering alien tech. The stealth shuttle looked like a small Vraxian vessel from the outside, but inside it was packed with human technology and the precious pheromone disruptors. Colonel Brooks and his team of 5 Special Forces soldiers checked their equipment one final time before boarding. "Remember," he told them, "our job isn't to fight. It's to deliver the package and get out. If all goes well, the Vraxians will do most of the fighting among themselves." 2 days later, the largest Vraxian fleet ever assembled appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. 300 major warships and over 1,000 smaller vessels moved toward the planet in a massive formation that stretched for thousands of miles across space. Supreme Overlord Dirac himself commanded the fleet. From his flagship, the Inevitable Victory, it was the first time in 500 years that a Supreme Overlord had personally led a military campaign. That alone showed how important this battle was to the Vraxians. "The humans have gathered to defend their homeworld, as expected," Dirac observed, looking at the tactical display showing the human fleet. "They are brave but foolish. They cannot stand against our combined might." The human fleet was indeed outnumbered. Despite gathering every available ship, Admiral Grant could muster only about half the number of vessels as the Vraxians. But he had positioned them carefully, using Earth's moon as a defensive position and placing minefields at strategic points in space. As the Vraxian fleet advanced, the human ships held their position, waiting. Admiral Grant stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiant, renamed in honor of Captain Miller's original ship, watching the tactical displays. Jack Miller stood beside him, his face grim but determined. "All ships, maintain formation, Admiral," Grant ordered. "Wait for them to enter the engagement zone." Meanwhile, Colonel Brooks and his team guided their stealth shuttle through the outer edges of the Vraxian fleet. Their vessel's disguise and stealth systems were working perfectly. So far, no Vraxian ship had challenged them. "Target in sight," Brooks whispered, though there was no need to be quiet in space. Preparing for docking procedure. The shuttle moved slowly toward the massive form of the Inevitable Victory, the heart of the Vraxian fleet. It was time for the most dangerous part of their mission. 2 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. Captain Jack Miller stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Unity, watching the approach of the Vraxian delegation ship. The sleek, dark vessel moved slowly toward the neutral meeting station positioned between Earth and Vraxian space. Jack's hair had more gray in it now, and a long scar ran down the side of his face, a reminder of the final battle. He turned as Ambassador Laura Wright joined him at the viewport. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and eyes that showed both intelligence and kindness. "Are you ready for this?" Jack asked her. Laura nodded. "As ready as anyone can be. This is the first formal peace talk between humans and Vraxians. It's historic." Jack looked back at the approaching alien ship. "They still don't understand us," he said quietly. "They think we want to destroy them completely as they would do in our position." "Don't we?" Laura asked, her voice serious. "After all they did to our colonies? The millions of lives lost?" "That's the difference they can't comprehend," Jack replied. "We don't need to be apex predators. We're something they've never encountered before, a species that can choose compassion over dominance." The Battle of Earth had been the turning point in the war. While the human fleet engaged the Vraxians in direct combat, Colonel Brooks and his team had successfully infiltrated the Vraxian flagship and deployed the pheromone disruptors. The effect had been immediate and devastating. The carefully organized Vraxian fleet fell into confusion, with ships firing on one another and command structures collapsing. Supreme Overlord Dirac had been killed in the chaos, not by human weapons, but by his own officers who believed he had given orders to attack them. Without central leadership, the Vraxian forces had retreated in disarray. In the 2 years since, humans had pushed the Vraxians back across multiple star systems, liberating colonies, and eventually forcing the aliens to request peace talks. The door to the observation deck slid open and Admiral Grant entered. He walked with a slight limp now, another reminder of the cost of victory. "The Vraxian ship is requesting docking clearance," he informed them. "Their Supreme Hunter will be leading their delegation." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Kazovac survived, I'm impressed." "Apparently he's now their Supreme Overlord," the Admiral said. "After Dirac's death there was a power struggle. Kazovac won." Laura straightened her formal diplomatic uniform. Then let's go meet him. The meeting chamber was large and circular, with a table in the center designed to accommodate both human and Vraxian physiology. The human delegation entered first, taking their positions on one side of the table. Jack stood behind Laura's chair, along with Admiral Grant and several other military and civilian leaders. When the Vraxians entered, Jack couldn't help but feel a chill. Despite everything that had happened, the aliens still inspired fear with their insect-like appearance and towering height. Kazvak led them, his exoskeleton now bearing the deep purple markings of a supreme overlord. "Ambassador Wright," Kazvak said, his voice translated by a small device on the table. "I am here to discuss terms of peace between our peoples." Laura nodded. "We welcome this opportunity, Supreme Overlord. Humanity desires an end to the conflict." The negotiations lasted for hours. The Vraxians, true to their nature, began with demands for human submission. Laura refused firmly but respectfully each time. Gradually, Kazivak seemed to understand that humans would accept nothing less than recognition as equals. By the end of the day, the outline of a treaty had emerged. It established boundaries and non-aggression pacts between human and Vraxian space. But its most revolutionary aspect was the formation of the Galactic Concord, a framework for diplomatic relations between all sentient species. This includes the release of all species currently under Vraxian control, Laura insisted. They must be given the right to self-determination. Kizavak's compound eyes fixed on her. "You would have us surrender our conquests? The 17 species that submit to Vraxian rule?" "Not surrender," Laura corrected. "Transform. Your relationship with them can evolve from dominance to cooperation. All species benefit that way." The Vraxian leader was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. "You humans are strange creatures. You defeated us, yet you do not seek to destroy us. You speak of cooperation when you could demand submission." "That's because we understand something your species is only beginning to learn," Laura said. "True strength isn't about dominating others. It's about finding ways to work together for mutual benefit." After 3 more days of negotiations, the treaty was ready. As Supreme Overlord Kazavak reluctantly added his mark to the document, he turned to General Carter, who had arrived to witness the historic moment. "How did you defeat us?" Kazavak asked. "We were stronger, more advanced. We had conquered 17 species before meeting humans." General Carter thought for a moment before answering. "You evolved to be perfect predators, and that made you predictable. We evolved to adapt, to work together against threats greater than ourselves. Every time you thought you had us figured out, we changed the rules." Kizavak made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret, but it seemed like acknowledgement. "And now we must adapt as well, or face extinction." "Not extinction," General Carter corrected. "Evolution. Your species can evolve culturally even if your biology remains the same. That's another human specialty. We change our behavior faster than evolution can change our bodies." In the months that followed the treaty signing, the 17 formerly conquered species were given freedom to choose their own paths. Some chose complete independence, others formed alliances with Earth, and a few even elected to maintain relationships with the Vraxians, but as partners rather than subjects. The Vraxians struggled to adapt to their new role in the galaxy. Centuries of being apex predators had shaped their culture around dominance and conquest. But under Kazavak's leadership, they began to change, slowly learning that cooperation could be as beneficial as conquest. 5 years after the peace treaty, Jack Miller, now an admiral himself, visited a trading station on the border between human and Vraxian space. He was surprised to see Vraxians and humans working side by side, along with members of several other species. A young officer accompanying him noticed his expression. "Something wrong, Admiral?" Jack shook his head. "Not wrong, just unexpected. When I first encountered the Vraxians, I never imagined a scene like this would be possible." The officer nodded. "My xenohistory professor said it best. The Vraxians learned to evolve beyond their instincts, and humans learned they could be strong without becoming predators themselves. Throughout the galaxy, a new saying spread among spacefaring civilizations. In the cosmic jungle, fear not the ones with the sharpest claws, but those who can make tools to overcome them. The humans had not just survived, they had transformed the galaxy.